Hello, and welcome to Boulder Review. I'm Carl Castillo, and in the first half of the show, I'll be speaking with Deputy Mayor Ken Wilson about Boulder's energy future and the critical decisions that are expected to be made later this summer that could impact the rates, the reliability, and the renewable sources associated with the city's electrical power. In the second half of the show, Jody Jacobson will be speaking with Ned Williams about the 4 Mile fire and how it's impacted the potential for flash flooding in Boulder. But first, here with me now is Deputy Mayor Ken Wilson. Ken, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Carl.
So Ken, if I understand correctly, recently the council, the city moved closer to making a decision to actually ask the voters this November to either create their own local power utility or to instead renew its relationship with Xcel to provide power to our residents and our businesses. Is that correct? And if so, why? And what kinds of decisions might we be asking of our voters?
Well, we've really been talking a lot about this issue for the last 2 years and on and off for the last 5 years. Every 20 years, the city has to make the decision whether or not to renew the Xcel franchise. And we've actually had this as a big issue in the city every 20 years for the last 60 years. And this is no different. So we've talked about this a lot. We've spent money with consultants. It's time, I think, to go to the voters to get them to weigh in on this. And there are really three main decision points. One, should we continue with Xcel under a franchise? Two, should we not have a franchise but continue to be served by Xcel? Or three, should we go through the very big process of forming a municipal utility? And I think council wants the voters to weigh in on this now.
Right. That's what I'm hearing loud and clear. So I know that in order for council to make these decisions, to move something to the ballot, they need a lot of information from both staff and from the city's consultants. And I understand we're starting to receive some information. There was a study session on that recently. What types of information are we receiving, and how valuable is it proving to be?
We've really gotten some draft consultant reports. One was kind of a baseline study on where are we now, what's the renewable content of the Xcel energy source, what's the reliability, all of that kind of baseline comparison information with other cities. We also this weekend received some ideas on, if we were a municipal utility, these are the kinds of projects we could do. These are, really what we could look maybe in the future if we have the money. We could do these kinds of, renewable energy projects and that. What we don't have yet is the real critical data on the business case.
Okay. Sounds like that may be the most important information is yet to come.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So based on the information that we are receiving, that you have had a chance to review, what are the risks and rewards that you're starting to see for creating a local utility?
I'll start with the rewards because that's where we've gotten most of the information so far. If you're a municipal utility, the city could control its own rates, so the council would set the utility rates, not Xcel and the Public Utility Commission. We would manage it ourselves, so we'd have more control. We could possibly have much better renewable energy supplies, though that, we haven't gotten all the information to see if we could really do that. So it gives us a lot more control. We could theoretically keep the money that Xcel makes as a profit, because they do make a profit on this business, and we could use that if it turns out we could make a similar profit, we could use that on projects. On the risk side, this is a huge undertaking. It's going to be expensive. We would have to buy the distribution grid from Xcel. That's all the wires, the transformers, the substations, everything in the city that belongs to Xcel, we would have to condemn it and buy it. It would take a lot of time. This would probably be a 2 or 3 year fight with Xcel, and then you've got your startup. So that's a time and money risk. We'd have to hire staff, a lot of staff to do this, or hire outside firms to take over the maintenance and repair of the system. So it's just a very big project, and the dollars are the biggest risk. Could we really capture the money that Xcel is taking away as a profit, or would this cost us more to do than it costs Xcel, and we might be in the hole? That's the big risk.
So I want to ask you about those costs, but before I do, I want to clarify one point, because you said that perhaps the profit that Xcel is making right now could be something that the city could use and turn towards projects. What did you mean by that? Because I know the city's not in the business of creating a profit. So if we were to garner that additional money, how could we use that?
Right. Most of the cities that are municipal utilities now, like Fort Collins and Loveland, they actually have slightly lower rates than Xcel does. And they do that because they don't need to make a profit. Really, our motivation to potentially form a municipal utility would not be to lower the rates. What most of the people who want a muni in Boulder would like to do is to invest in renewable energy. Use that difference, if there is one, for wind farms or solar or other renewable type projects.
Credits, perhaps, to encourage people to incentivize them to buy renewables. Okay.
Exactly. Maybe, Xcel has the solar rewards. We could maybe do a better one.
Right. Well, so back to the issue of costs. You touched on it. Can you perhaps explain again what are the types of the costs that the city, because I know we don't have the actual numbers now, and that's a big part of the business plan, but what are the categories of costs that we could expect that the city would have to incur?
Sure. Big costs, you got some upfront costs, like legal costs in fighting Xcel. Every time a city wants to municipalize in the last 20 years, they have a big fight with the company that they're taking the business from. So this could be an expensive legal battle. It could be $10, $20 million. Then, as I said a moment ago, we would have to buy the assets of Xcel in the city of Boulder. That could be very expensive. Then there's another cost, which is called stranded investments. Xcel has made investments over the last 20 years to support Boulder in terms of generation of electricity. We might have to pay for some of those stranded assets. And then there are startup costs. We have to recreate all the programs that Xcel already provides, like solar rewards. We would have to hire staff to do that. And just all of the costs associated with starting up a new business, we would have to fund that. So that's really what we're looking to characterize, and we have our consultants working on.
Okay, so how can our voters be confident that we wouldn't, so it sounds like right now you have a good idea for the kinds of costs, but how do we know that there won't be some additional unexpected costs? And the reason I ask that, I know that recently Council had an opportunity to hear from a representative from Las Cruces, New Mexico, and they had just that. They had totally unexpected costs that in the end made it impossible for them to pursue it. How can we, or maybe what's changed from back then, the early 90s when they pursued it, to what the condition is now that the Boulder is facing?
Well, that's really what I want to avoid. I call that the nightmare scenario. Las Cruces, their voters decided they wanted to municipalize. They did a bond, like $100 million, and they started spending money out of that bond in order to fight, the legal fight plus consultant fees and all of this. And over the course of some years, they ran up about a $20 million bill. And then they decided, this is too expensive, we can't do this. And so they had to back out of it. And they had spent about $20 million, and they had no revenue from the utility to cover that. So while I don't think we will make the mistakes they did, it's always the unexpected. What's the unexpected cost, the unexpected obstacle that could stop you? And if you were taking money from the bond that you're supposed to be buying the utility and starting it up with, if your startup costs are from that bond, you could be in the hole and have no way to repay it if you stop the process. So that's what I think we need to avoid, perhaps from maybe getting the voters to decide on a tax, a small tax, to fund those startup costs.
Okay, yes, because it sounds like voters will be very hesitant until they know that there is some assurance that this isn't going to come with a unlimited expense. This isn't an unlimited check that they're writing.
That's correct. And part of the problem of doing something like this, it's a chicken and egg problem. You know, you need the revenue from the utility to fund the startup, but you don't have the revenue until you've started it.
Right.
So that's something I think we'll all be grappling with
Okay.
in the next few months.
Really breaking new ground here, it sounds like, in many ways.
Absolutely.
So what about the actual management and operations of this utility? You mentioned many times hiring staff, and certainly that's one model that we could create our own department in the city like we have for the water utilities department. But I also know that I believe we can contract out with a private organization to manage this and to operate it. So how would the city go about making those decisions, or has there already been some thought given to that?
Well, there's really two main issues here. One is what I call the daily operations, and that's kind of what you referred to. Who's out there with the trucks, maintaining the transformers, repairing downed lines, the day-to-day operations like we do in the water. Who's doing that? There are several models there. I mean, we could hire the staff, and this might be 400 or 500 people to run this. We could do that, or we could hire out parts of it. I don't think we would hire out all of it or contract all of it, because we would want probably to have the person managing the utility day to day to be a city person. We have all of these great ideas about renewable energy projects. We're probably going to want a group of people that will look at new technology, and you don't want to hire that out. So we'll have to look at the puts and takes for hiring that out. Then there's another big issue, which is the governance structure. How are we going to govern this? Would it be a model like our water utility, where the council makes all the decisions, sets the rates, makes the decisions on big projects? Or would it be more of an appointed or an elected board that would make all those decisions?
Yeah.
So there's some weighty issues just in the management.
It sounds like retaining the policy control as well as the creative kind of research, cutting edge, it would be an important role for as close to council, close to the city as possible, whereas the rest could perhaps go to the free market, private sector.
Well, it's possible. We have to look at that. When you go to the private sector contracting out that part of the business, sometimes it's difficult to make changes that you might want to make. It might be expensive. Oh, that's not in the contract. We can't do that.
Right.
So there's pluses and minuses to all of those things.
So council is going to be receiving some additional information. I think it's June 15th.
Yes, I believe so.
Is that kind of like the final round of information that's coming, or is that still just kind of phase 2?
Well, it's really phase 2. I think we'll get information, probably clear until we vote in, October, November. Well, council will have to decide what to put on the ballot, but then the voters will have to decide how to vote on whatever we put on the ballot.
Up until then, there may be new information.
I think we will. We're supposed to get the business case information, which is what I'm really looking for, to compare it with information we had from 6 years ago that was supplied by a different consultant, and see, are we being too optimistic here? Are we being too pessimistic? Where is this falling out?
Right. Well, we're just about out of time, but I wanted to just end in asking you one question. So the city has spent lots of time, council has spent a lot of time, staff has spent a lot of resources doing this. How committed is council to getting some clear direction from our voters this November, so that we won't go further on this issue without getting that direction from our voters?
Well, when we talked about this last month, it looked to me like it was pretty unanimous that we need the voters to really weigh in on this. And I personally am very committed to that. We need to get something on the ballot. It might even be 2 things on the ballot. We'll see. Because we've spent a lot of money, and I don't feel comfortable about going further with this until the voters really say, yes, we want to go this way, or we want to go the other way.
That's when we'll find out. That's when the rubber hits the road, as they say.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we are out of time. We've been speaking with Deputy Mayor Ken Wilson about Boulder's energy future. For more information about this, you can check it out on the web at bouldersenergyfuture.com. Ken, thanks so much for joining us today.
My great pleasure.